Hello, I'm Chris Osmond, and this is Solutions. Enough complaining, let's fix America. Again, I want to stay on the theme that I talked about yesterday as to why our government doesn't seem to represent the people and their desires, and it seems to move slow for everybody except for the rich. Today I'm going to be reading this segment from my book, Solutions Enough Complaining, Let's Fix America. This chapter is chapter 5. It's in section 1, which is the assumptions section. If you want to know about the breakdown of the book, please go back to a previous video where I read the introduction to the book, and it describes how the book is broken down into 3 sections and why it's broken down in that manner. Like I said, today I want to discuss again why it feels like the government only works for a very small minority of the population. Anyway, let's get started. This is Chapter 5 from Solutions Enough Complaining, Let's Fix America. The link will be provided down below where you can purchase a book or get the Android version of the book. Actually, before I start, I'd like to talk about the Android version of the book. It's an app that I created. It's called the A-Book, and it basically it's more than just a PDF or an ebook. It actually has all the references in my book, has live links to all those references. So you can click on a link and it will take you to either a video interview or audio interview or an article that I used as a source for the book. So, and on it's on Google, the Google Play Store. The link will be provided below, and it's only for Android devices right now. I haven't gotten around to iOS yet, but when I do, it'll be available for Apple as well. As I said, it's available at the Google Play Store, and it's only 99 cents in the Android form, or the paperback can be purchased at either Amazon or on MikesonsEntertainment.com, which I will provide links to below as well. If you get it at Mikesons, there's a $2 discount for the paperback. Anyway, now let's move on. Chapter 5, Political Leaders. The entire country is being held hostage by 545 people. Quote, the government only moves slowly for the 99%. In the United States of America, there are 3 branches of the federal government. These branches are there to provide checks and balances against any one of them getting too big for their britches. What happens, however, when all 3 branches get too big for their britches as they collude in ways beneficial to themselves? What happens when all 3 branches start pumping out millionaires instead of humble, retired public servants? As stated previously, there are 3 branches in the federal government of the United States of America. First, there is the legislative branch. Congress, a bicameral legislature that consists of 2 chambers, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Each state is represented by 2 senators, while the number of representatives varies depending on the size of the population of that state. Amongst all duties of Congress, there are the responsibilities of writing laws and declaring wars. Congress also holds the purse strings of the government. Next, you have the executive branch. The presidency, a one-man show which amongst its duties are vetoing laws, waging wars that Congress declares, enforcing laws of Congress, executing orders, and more. Finally, you have the judicial branch, with the Supreme Court being the highest court in the land. This branch is tasked with determining the validity and constitutionality of the laws passed by Congress and executive orders enacted by the President. While this is a very simplistic view of these 3 branches and their respective duties, it should suffice for our purposes here because it is not my intention to provide a course in social studies. This book was written to provide reference, a starting point for those who are wondering why they seem to have less control of their lives and futures. Now, as for all that hostage talk, let's look closer to determine whether this is hyperbolic, exaggerated, or not. I guess the quickest way to make this determination would be to list some of the things that impact the most people's lives and figure out whether those 545 people in Washington, D.C. acted in the interest of the rest of us or not. So let's just start off with one that not only affects us here at home, but millions of people around the world: war. As a side note, although America is bombing countries all over the planet, most of which most Americans have never even heard of, America itself has not declared war since 1941. That's right. America has not officially been at war since World War II because the branch of our government that has the right to declare war has not done so since we fought the axis of evil. Oh, almost all presidents have kept the American war machine going for close to 6 decades, 58 years to be precise. But America has not been officially at war since we defeated Hitler. So, we've been attacking dozens of countries since 1945, but been at war with not even one. Does this sound like the will of the American people? Well, let's take a minute here to try to figure out what happened. Maybe those countries had it coming, or maybe they were planning on attacking the United States. I do, after all, continually hear a lot of talk about preemptive strikes. There must be something to this claim. First, however, let's look at one of the oldest attacks America made after World War II, China. During the Korean War, the North Korean leader Kim Il-sung caught American and South Korean forces off guard and pushed into Seoul. Rallying his forces and the South Koreans, General Douglas MacArthur pushed the North Korean forces all the way back to the North Korean-Chinese border, at which point the Chinese attacked to defend their borders. So we attacked the Chinese because they were defending themselves from the threat they perceived as coming from American encroachment. This one I see being argued either way, but let's consider why we were helping the South Korea in the first place. Was North Korea a threat to America? Yes, because we've seen from North Korea recently, they are actively developing a nuclear missile that could reach American shores. So yes, this conflict seemed the logical and wise course of action, and it did make sense as related to America's future safety. Did American leaders choose other conflicts as wisely, however? Let's look. In 1954, Jacobo Arbenz, the president of Guatemala, recognized all political parties, including the Communist Party, and he nationalized 1.5 million acres of land, including land belonging to his own family, to create a more equitable society. Some of the land returned to the people of Guatemala was held by an American business called the United Fruit Company. In response to Arbenz's patriotism, the CIA bombed Guatemala's capital, sending Arbenz into exile and leaving 100,000 Guatemalans dead in the wake. In this instance, one is hard-pressed to see any benefits to the American public or the nation of Guatemala. This could never be considered a humanitarian effort because it cost the lives of so many. In the end, the only benefactor appears to have been a company, the United Fruit Company. This would be an example of American capitalism at its worst, but not its last. Let's move on. In Cuba, once Castro overthrows the Batista regime and becomes prime minister, the United States makes several attempts to weaken Castro, if not remove him from power altogether, by utilizing embargoes and even alleged assassination attempts. The American public had a great fear of the communist threat that Cuba represented, so it's not hard to believe that our government had the full support of many American citizens. In 1965, America attacked the Dominican Republic for fear of the possibility of another Cuba in the hemisphere. This I could see garnering support from the American population given the fear of the communist threat. Provided no other evidence was presented, it still appeared as if our leadership was acting according to the will of the people. For brevity, the following is a list of some of the countries we've attacked without declaring war since 1945. For this list, I've left out those countries that America potentially bombed, but the details surrounding those attacks were in dispute or are in dispute. Korea, 1950 to 1953. Cuba, 1959 to 1960. Cuba, 1961. Laos, 1964 to 1973. Vietnam, 1961 to 1973. Cambodia, 1969 to 1970. More bombs dropped than the whole World War II. Grenada, 1983 to 1984. UN General Assembly termed it a flagrant violation of international law. Nicaragua, 1979 to 1990. Though denied by some, I've included it in this list because this one included the Iran-Contra conspiracy, which had grave consequences on Reagan's war on drugs. Something that has allowed for the growth of the modern-day slavery in America. Source, Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. There's a link below. Libya, 1986. Panama, 1989 to 1990. Iraq, 1991. Kuwait, 1991, due to bombing of Iraq. Bosnia, 1995. Sudan, 1998. Afghanistan, 1998. Yugoslavia, Serbia, 1999. Iraq, 2003 to 2011. That's the official date. Of course, we know that we were still at war, still bombing Iraq well after 2011. Libya, 2011. Following is a list of countries we've bombed in the past and continue to bomb as of the writing of this book. Afghanistan, 2001 to present. Pakistan, 2004 to present. Yemen, 2004 to present. Even though in Yemen we've kind of handed over the bombing of that country to Saudi Arabia, or we have only been assisting Saudi Arabia by selling the bombs that they drop on Yemen. Somalia, 2011 to present. Iraq, 2014 to present. Syria, 2014 to present. Like I said, this was as of the printing of this book. Niger, unknown start to present. Now, all of these bombings were supposedly carried out in the interest of the United States. But is it in the best interest of the United States to have killed 1.3 million people and spent $4 trillion doing so, especially without the consent of an informed populace or even an informed representation, Congress, of said populace? In retrospect, most Americans have chosen to sacrifice so much money, time, and lives for the perception of safety, for which such actions were supposedly carried out? Do Americans feel safe in America? Do we feel threatened by countries on the other side of the planet? Do we feel safer as we alienate so many of our supposed allies by ignoring the will of the international community? Especially since Donald Trump has become president, we've basically alienated almost all of our allies by calling them non-allies or saying they have to stand on their own. Sorry for that. That was a sidebar, but let's get back to the book. Could this blood and treasure have been put to better use to secure the sovereignty of other nations, the economy and safety of other nations, as well as that of the United States, and the liberty in which so many Americans take pride? Let's see. $1.4 trillion could have paid for a college education for every person in the country. Actually, only $80 billion, a mere 5.7% of that $1.4 trillion, could have gotten the job done. So, for that initial investment of $80 billion, we could be seeing a revenue, taxes collected for higher paying jobs of college students, of about $560 billion. Instead, what did we get for the $80 billion that would have gone to college as we dropped bombs in other countries? I don't know. Do you? Hell, I don't even know who to ask to know, or whether there is a person or agency that can provide the return on investment for the bombs we've dropped since 1941, or let's just say since 9/11. Sidebar. There were stories going around, I haven't really looked into it, where it's like $21 trillion or something got missing and is unaccountable from the Pentagon. I know it was a lot of money that those kind of stories just float away and disappear, and that doesn't make any sense. We should hold our government to a greater standard than we hold our own personal checkbooks. And they keep telling us that we need to balance our own budgets, yet they can't even keep track of trillions of dollars. There's a big problem there. Okay. Now, this is the next section. It's called What About Healthcare? If America had put some of the trillions of dollars spent on war into healthcare instead, how much would we have lost? Oh, wait, We actually wouldn't even have had to take money away from the military budget to maintain a Medicare for All program. You see, the money that individuals or families pay now for their insurance premiums would go into the system instead. This would be possible because the pool of insured would be so large the annual tax for Medicare for All would be less than the annual cost of premiums for private insurance and the copays currently required. Some estimates state that the average family would save approximately $3,800 per year on their premiums alone and another $5,100 if deductibles are factored in for any given year. This, however, does not serve the desire of the wealthy, so universal health care is out of the question. More on that later. Let's consider security. After bombing several countries for the past 15 plus years, do we feel any safer here in America? I, for one, do not. I actually feel less safe because of the threats that I believe have been made probable by the actions of our military. Now, before I move forward, I do not want my words to be taken as any kind of disrespect for our servicemen and women. In all honesty, I believe that it is our political leaders and military leaders who are disrespecting those who serve in defense of this once great country. Our elected officials and military leaders, and us by extension, have people dying on both sides of every conflict that we are told is for our benefit. And while I'm all for things that benefit the United States, I'm not nor ever could be for those things that cause harm to others for our benefit, especially when those benefits only reach the smallest of cohorts, the rich. So given these few examples, I wonder how most people feel about the way that their country represents them around the world. Do the citizens of other countries look at America as a great example of democracy, or is it perceived as that craven place where the people have no clue as to what countries their tax dollars pay to bomb? I wonder, if informed and asked, would most Americans choose to bomb all the countries that America has bombed and is bombing to this day? Given that almost 50%, half, of all wage earners in America only make $30,000. That number's been revised. I talked about it in a previous video. Given that almost 50% of all wage earners in America only make $30,000 per year on average, would most be inclined to spend another million or billion on such single-use weapons, or any weapons for that matter? Would most Americans vote for military budget, which is greater than the military spending of the next 10 countries combined? As a sidebar, I would like to point out the fact that most of these other 10 countries are located much closer to the very threats that America continuously bombs. Maybe that's why, other than Israel, America is the biggest target in the Middle East. It's as if we're not being told the truth about why so many countries around the world hate America. Maybe America isn't being properly represented by those who say they have our best interests at heart. I know that I, for one, do not feel properly represented by the bombs we sprinkle so freely about the planet. I know that those bombs don't represent the feelings I have towards people around the world. As for the preemptive strike argument, it holds little water for me. When the groups that grow out of our preemptive strikes are worse than those meant to be stopped or contained by said preemptive strikes, it is time to question the validity of such actions. It's like slapping a beloved bar owner because you heard he was going to kick you later. Now, I know this anecdote might not make that much sense, but isn't that appropriate? So, yet again, we have, things that are supposed to appear to be for the people. War is supposed to be for the American people, but it doesn't benefit anybody in America. Wars don't help the economy. They don't help our security. They don't help the people that we're bombing. They don't help anybody except for those who are selling the weapons to either those countries that are bombing other countries, or the rich who benefit from all the military spending that America does to bomb these other countries. America is not the sheriff of the world anymore. We never should have been. Because we're all we did was create more enemies. I mean, look at what we did in Afghanistan and Iraq. We supposedly bombed Al Qaeda, and now we've got ISIS, and now we've got either other terrorists, and they attack each other, and we attack the ISIS and Al Qaeda. It doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. We're creating these problems around the world. We need to stop. I mean, there was a warning about the military-industrial complex from a previous president. Maybe we should heed his warning and stop attacking these. Now, as far as how this relates to what's going on right now, we have a pandemic, and our leaders, they do not seem to have any clue as to what to do. They're like, no masks. Now everybody has to wear a mask. They're like, no, we don't have to shelter in place. Now shelter in place. No, now everybody can go back out. Because of why? The virus didn't go away. It's not done. And the doctors, even Trump's own doctors, are saying that it hasn't gone away. So why are we doing the things that we're doing? Everybody has to basically protect themselves. And now, like I said, I've always said, and I've been saying for years, and I've said it in previous videos, capitalism, or as I refer to it as crapitalism, has given us two choices right now. You can either stay home and starve because you don't have any income, because our government is not providing relief to the masses. It's only providing relief to the wealthy. So you can either stay home and you and your family can starve, or you can go to work and you could possibly catch the disease, and either you or someone in your family that's susceptible or has a deficient immune system can catch COVID-19 and they can die. And then you get to live with the guilt as you work for more and more poverty wages. And these corporations praise you as an essential worker. Places like Walmart, a company that used to take out insurance policies against its own employees that they deemed would be dying soon. Yes, that's Walmart. They had statistics that showed that they got caught because they had statistics against some of their employees who would most likely die, people with like cancer. And so they would take out millions of dollars in insurance policies, and they got caught doing that. Walmart, they praise their essential workers. But they paid such low wages just a few years ago that they actually had to show their people how to collect government handouts. Amazon, they praise their workers. But they used to dock their people for going to the bathroom for too long because the bathrooms were so far away from their workstations. Amazon praised their people, but Amazon also stationed EMTs outside of some of these warehouses because they didn't want to install air conditioning. So if someone got heat stroke, the EMT was there. That was more cost effective. Now, some of you jaded people, cynical people, might be okay with that, but that's not sustainable. And if it was a family member of yours, I don't think you would be okay with that. Or if it was a loved one of yours, I don't think you'd be okay with that. But anyway, those companies are now putting out commercials or PSAs. I don't know what they're called, but they're putting these things on TV that show them praising these essential workers when they've been treated like crap for years. They've been paid wages that are so low that nobody could sustain a good life out of that without going into debt. America needs to change. Our government needs to react. And as far as the government reacting, this is a fifth stimulus bill that's coming out, and yet again, it's another bill that benefits the rich, but doesn't do anything for the rest of us. We got $1,200, and we were supposed to be happy with that. And now as we continue to go into the next month and the next month, and the choice is either starve or go to work and possibly get infected. How has our government acted? I don't know why people aren't, complaining more about them not acting. They want to reopen the states. People are protesting, reopen the states and reopen businesses and everything. Maybe they should protest the fact that our government could have saved a lot of lives by having us quarantined and giving us a universal basic income, at least until this threat passed, or at least until we soften the curve or stem the tide of coronavirus. It's ridiculous. People need to wake up and they need to go out. If they're going to go out and protest and be stupid with no masks, they need to go to Congress and they need to protest those leaders, because until those people feel threatened, nothing will change in America. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Solutions Enough Complaining. Let's Fix America. And join me again when we'll discuss another topic